Nightly greetings, one and all. Denise Osorio here, homegrown and happy to bring you PTV News Now. Tops on our stories tonight, over 5 dozen residents of 2 Surigao del Sur towns are fortunate recipients of DSWD's Zero Hunger Payouts program that will let them engage in agriculture production and MSMEs with a startup capital of 15,000 each. In a statement released earlier today, DSWD Region 13 or DSWD Caraga said the funds would be invested or put into growing local businesses such as corn, coffee, banana chip, salted eggs, and chorizo production. In the town of Tabina, the fortunate recipients have their sights set on investing in equipment and raw materials for corn, coffee, and salted egg production. Whilst in the municipality of Barobo, funds from the DSWD endowment or grant have been pooled to acquire machinery and equipment for banana chip and chorizo production. DSWD's Zero Hunger Payout Scheme is under the department's Sustainable Livelihood program that seeks to slash the incidence of hunger by boosting food security in rural areas. The Keystone State, which United States President Joe Biden won by 81,000 votes, has been the most visited by both campaigns this year, more than double the next closest. Its 19 electoral votes is most coveted, especially by Democrat bet Kamala Harris, whose path to victory entails winning Pennsylvania. This VOA report.
It's been called the king of the swing states, Pennsylvania, one of 7 states that will likely decide the 2024 U.S. presidential race. And it's widely seen as a must-win for Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump to take the White House in November. Candidates need 270 electoral votes to clinch the presidency. Pennsylvania is worth 19, one of the biggest prizes in the country. But it's also one of the hardest to predict. Professor Joe Morris of Mercyhurst University in Erie, Pennsylvania, unpacks the swing state where Trump and Harris are campaigning the most.
Pennsylvania was once described as being Philadelphia and Pittsburgh with Alabama in the middle. And what we mean by that is that we have 2 major population centers and then a large number of smaller communities that dot this very large state. And I think that's one of the things that makes Pennsylvania such an interesting place.
Pennsylvania was long considered a reliably Democratic state, part of the so-called Blue Wall.
That changed in 2016. In 2016, Donald Trump punched a giant hole through the blue wall that included not only Pennsylvania, but also Michigan and Wisconsin.
Morris says Trump saw an opening in Pennsylvania to win over Democrats.
Pennsylvania is a state that tends to vote Democratic in presidential elections. But the state is largely socially conservative. We have a history of enacting some of the most conservative legislation, particularly with regard to abortion, that you would have found anywhere 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
In 2020, the state voted for a Democrat again, this time one of its own, Joe Biden, who grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Still, the Republican Party here has only grown in recent years.
There are by far more Republicans registered in Pennsylvania than I've seen in my lifetime. We are approaching, in Pennsylvania and in Erie County, parity between Democrats and Republicans, something that 10, 15 years ago would have been unheard of.
White working-class Pennsylvanians without college degrees account for roughly half of the state's eligible voters. Many of them are drawn to Trump. But high turnout in the urban areas, which are more diverse, could help Harris. Latino voters could also tip the scales. Nearly 580,000 will be eligible to cast a ballot this year, according to one estimate. In 2020, Biden won by just 81,000 votes.
Pennsylvania is a really interesting mix. We have, in terms of our racial composition, an interesting mix. In terms of our income levels, interesting mix. And the group this year that is probably going to play the deciding role is women. Women have been incredibly important in past elections, and when it comes to presidential elections, women not only are more likely to go to the polls and vote than men, but they vote at a higher percentage.
Pennsylvanians' top concern, like people in every other swing state, is the economy.
We have to remember that many of Pennsylvania's communities were devastated decades ago when manufacturing left, and today they're still looking.
For months, polls from Pennsylvania have shown Trump and Harris in a virtual tie. One place that pollsters are looking at for clues is Erie County.
Erie County is probably the swingiest swing county in the entire United States. We voted for the winner in 23 of the last 25 statewide elections. So if you want to understand what's happening in Pennsylvania politics, the place to come is Erie.
But it's hard to know exactly what's happening here. Signs for both candidates are everywhere, and Republican and Democratic operatives just across town from one another are battling to win over as many voters as possible before Election Day.
At this moment, let's turn to my colleague in PTV's Baguio City studios for what's hot and happening in the Cordilleras. Audrey?
Naimbag Arabi, Pilipinas. Impasigurado ti Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development Cordillera, ti panakaipa iti tulong kadagiti residente ang nadadaulan iti balay iti panagdalapos ti Bagyo a Christine. May basar iti listaan ti ahensya na adaw iti DSWD Dromic, dumanon iti 181 abalay iti Cordillera ti nadadael gapo iti naglabas a bagyo. Kaaduan kadagiti nadadal abalay kat nailista iti Apayao, Kalinga ken Mountain Province. Nagpanawagan met ti DSWD kadagiti lokal a gobyerno nga isumitirdan dagiti kasapulan a dokumento para iti madagdagos apan nakaipa iti kaskanan a tulong kadagiti naapektaran a pamilya. Iti sidong ti Integrated Disaster Shelter Assistance Program, dagiti households nga dan iti partially damaged houses ket umawat iti 10,000 pesos one-time financial assistance, bayat adagiti totally damaged houses ket umawat iti 30,000 pesos cash assistance. Daytoy at tulong pinansyal ket tapno adda mausar dagiti naapektaran a pamilya, iti panang patarimaan iti nadadael a balayda.
We already coordinated through a letter doon sa mga provinces regarding sa submission ng kanilang mga documents, and then we will conduct validation.
Iti sa Balita adamag kas panagsagana ti panakaobserbar ti Undas, nasurok 5 aggasot a pulis ken nasurok 3 gasot a volunteers ti mai-deploy iti nagduduma a sementeryo ken kangrunan a kalsada paturong kadagiti sementeryo. Sigun iti Baguio City Police Office, manamnama ang umatob ti bilang dagiti agturong kadagiti sementeryo, a pinaado dagiti turista. Impanamnama pa iti City Director nga agbalin anaan Nayas, natalged ken nakapya iti obserbasyon ti Undas iti syudad. Kabayatan na, inmunan nga inpablak ti BCPO ti publiko kadagiti sumagmamano a pakdaar, inton Oktubre 31 aging Nobyembre 2. San ang mabaling aglako iti uneg ti sementeryo? Yunag dagiti taraken nga ayop iti sementeryo ken agparada iti abay ti sementeryo. Maiparit met lang iti anyaman nga igam kas iti paltog ken dumaan at patadem, garden tools, arak, sigarilyo, flammable materials, gambling materials ken loudspeakers.
Andyan na rin yung mga territorial police forces o mga station commanders, or mga stations, nasakop nila yan. As early as now, tinitignan na. Baga, binibisita nila. The Undas 2024 will be generally peaceful here in the city of Baguio.
Dagiti damdamag manipod iti PTV Cordillera, Chuck, Audrey Villena, Naimbag Arabi.
And that's all she wrote for tonight's show. Join us anew tomorrow for a twin bill of top-breaking stories both here and abroad. And stay connected by catching the news right here. Denise Osorio here, wishing you a restful night and thank you for watching PTV News Now.